Board for Thursday, April 18th. And this is a public forum on the annual town meeting articles, which can be found on the website and were finalized, I don't know, I guess it was a week or so ago. So I'll take attendance. Kathy?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
Ann? Not here. John? Here. Becky?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think Ann will be showing up shortly, and I think Greg will be here shortly as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, good. All right. So I think we can probably get started. I'll check with my colleagues. I'm wondering whether we should make this kind of a random question issue, bring up our issues as they come up, or if we should go through this article by article. You folks have a...
I think last year we went through an article by article.
Did we go article by article?
Here's article 1. Does anybody have any questions? Article, we just kind of went through it one at a...
Sounds like a good idea.
All right, we can do that. I think that's probably, from our perspective, would be the most organized approach. So
I'm gonna try and get me today.
excellent. All right, so we will go through the warrant article by article, and there are 21 of them. And if anyone has questions, let's see. I guess you'll just have to speak up. Are you going to be on the? Becky will be on there. Okay.
Try and get it.
And you will. Okay, so you can speak up. I don't think there are so many folks that we can't be organized with this. If you want to speak up because you have a question with regard to an article. So let's start with Article 1. The first few are fairly administrative.
Should they raise their hands? And I think that's the best way to do it, and not just speak up.
Okay, either way, but I think that.
And I'll disable the chat because it just doesn't help.
Thank you.
When that's going on. Okay.
Tap it and see what happens.
Whoops.
Oops.
Whoops. Hold.
We are still on.
All righty then. Oh, Pete's sake.
Thanks for taking possession of it.
Sorry, and thank you everyone for your patience. We thought we were going to be in one room. There was a neat meeting, so we are actually in another. Well, we'll have to wait for Greg because Tiffany.
Return.
Oh, there you go.
Until you get back to where you were.
Do that with my click all the time.
Excellent.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you, Becky.
So I think Greg can disable the chat.
I'm not going to mess with that.
Yeah, all right. Okay. All right. Let's get started with Article 1, which is with regard to filing the reports of the boards and committees. Any questions on Article 1? Article 2, to fix the 12-month salaries for a number of elective officers, etc. That's 0, I might add. Any questions on numbers? Article 2.
Years.
No hands raised.
Article 3. All right, this is with regard to appropriating funds for the Essex North Shore Agriculture and Technical School District. Any questions on Article 3? Article 4 is the town budget. That is several pages that is in the annual report. I don't know if you folks online have it. It is available in the town hall and it should be online as well. Any questions with regard to the budget? Article 5. This is appropriation of monies for specific items associated with capital expenditures. And that listing is also in the warrant article. I guess there are 23 items there. Any questions on Article 5? Article 6 is with regard to the acquiring and purchasing the senior center from the Masons. Any questions with regard to Article 6?
I will say the planning board just voted to support that.
That's good to hear.
Yep. No questions.
Okay. Article 7 is with regard to the launch service for the harbor and the town's acquisition of that service and conducting that service. Any questions with regard to Article 7?
Yes. Donna first.
Donna.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Just a quick question on that. Does Bion need a specific amount of commitments before we can, like, there's just been a lot of language regarding we would need, for it to be fiscally beneficial, that he would need to have a commitment, I think, of 70 people. Is that correct? I'm just curious as to how this is going to work moving forward if we don't have that commitment. Thank you.
Hi, this is Kathy. Yes, that's absolutely correct. There's kind of a two-step process here. So the launch service was an existing service that the business owner no longer wants to provide. So we would be, if the article is approved at town meeting, that would be giving us authorization to buy the boats from the current service provider. But this is not to be funded by taxpayer dollars. All of the funding for this particular service would come from user fees. We originally gave Bion a deadline of April 15th to collect all of those upfront fees. However, people were reluctant. We have enough committed people, but they were reluctant to actually hand over the money until town meeting approves the service. So we're in a bit of a catch-22 here. So on Monday night at the select board meeting, we extended the deadline to collect all of the upfront funds needed to noon on May 6th. So basically, if town meeting approves this article, the select Bion must collect all of the upfront fees required. I believe it is 70 customers by noon on May 6th. And then on the evening of May 6th, the select board meets again and we would either give a go or no go decision on the service. But that is the deadline. Now we had to change the deadline to noon on May 6th.
John Charles Furlong has his hand up.
Okay. Mr. Furlong. Chuck?
I apologize, John. I was putting up my hand in anticipation of Article 8.
Okay. It'll be coming.
Donna has her hand up again.
Okay.
Did that answer your question, Donna?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. That was very well stated. Thank you. And I'm super excited about it. Thank you very much.
Good.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Other questions on Article 7?
Donna, do you have more questions?
Drop your hand, Donna.
Otherwise, yeah.
Okay. All right. We will go to Article 8, which is a bond appropriation, $7.55 million for certain capital improvements associated with our water system and our sewer system. Any questions on Article 8?
May I ask my question now, John?
Maybe. Sure, Chuck, please.
Okay.
And
The
asking for names and
Yes, that's
address.
correct. Address,
Chuck Furlong, 19 Ocean Street.
thank you.
You bet. At the outset, the brochure from the Finance Committee suggests the increase will be 4.1%. My question is, does that include the expense of the debt exclusion in Article 8 or not? And if it does not, what will that expense contribute to an increase in the tax rate?
You got the math on that?
Sure.
Good, thank you.
So it'll translate to a roughly around a 2 percentage point increase to the tax rate. However, assuming let me back up. The tax rate is projected to be increased by 4.1% for 25 if the budget as proposed is approved and if the feasibility study funds are approved as a capital exclusion. That's a 1-year bump in the tax rate to collect the funds needed for the Essex Elementary School feasibility study. And then that goes away in 26. The bond payments would probably start in 27 and would be a very similar amount in terms of the tax rate. They're very close to the same amount of taxation required for paying 100% of the feasibility study up front, and then the annual new debt payments on the new 7.55 million.
Okay, Greg, so if I could just ask you to give me a simple number, what does that mean relative to the 4.1%? Up, down, or flat?
Flat.
Thank you.
That 2% is in that 4%.
For the feasibility
Yes.
study. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and then the feasibility study goes away, and then in its place would become the debt service.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of the increase to the payers, it's neutral after
What you're
that.
saying is, the question was on Article 8. And so, because this doesn't start until the following year.
Or 2
2
years.
years out.
Correct.
Okay, it's not an additional bump.
Right.
Oh, yes. Oh, Donna, could you provide your information from your question earlier?
Oh, yes, Donna Thursday, Blossom Lane.
Just for the record. Thank you very much. Okay, Chuck, that answers your question with 8? I guess.
It does. I'm sorry. I because I didn't want to be rude. I'd already muted myself, John.
Okay, thank you. All right. Other questions on Article 8? Article 9 is dealing with monies for improving the library and arranging to be qualified for a $150,000 matching grant from the Mass Public Library Construction Program. And, any questions on Article 9? And our chair has a thought.
Here's the chair.
My apologies.
Okay, Rick?
Yeah,
Name
hi,
and,
John.
name and address?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
We can. Name and address, please.
Yeah, sorry. Rick Rogers, 82 Old Essex Road. Also note that I'm a member of the Library Board of Trustees. Thanks, John and team, for taking the time. I missed Tuesday's meeting, so I just wanted to kind of follow up. I had heard that the select board wasn't necessarily fully unanimous on this
Rick, it was
warrant
an
article, and I just wanted to clarify where we were.
If I may, we had a good discussion. There were questions, and we went through the whole thing and decided that the grant would give us a chance to look at options for the future of the library. It didn't necessarily obligate us to go through any one path or any path at all. But after some discussion, we agreed that the money, which has already been allocated to the library, would be well used to match that grant.
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree, Ann, and you have that 100% right. So thank you very much. I just kind of wanted to clarify where we stood.
Okay. Additional questions on the library?
Yes.
Rick still has his hand
Oh,
up.
okay.
Or
Yeah, I'm working on that. I'll take it down.
Same problem.
All right. Is that it? I think for the library.
Yes.
Well, yes, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah Davis, 11 Highland Avenue. Also library trustee. I just had a procedural question since ours was noted as being reserved for voting on the floor at the meeting as opposed to being printed in here as approved. When it comes up at the meeting, well, one of the first things that gets said is the select board recommends, so that
Unanimously recommend.
Yes,
Okay.
that will be a statement.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Other questions on number 8?
I think we're
9, excuse me, I'm sorry, 9.
Okay, Article 10 is really a bookkeeping thing. It's a federal
These are settlement funds from
settlement
corporations,
funds from the opioid cases,
class action suits.
which come to the town, and so that they can be tracked and properly used, we need to set up an account to hold them. And the amount is $8,892, which doesn't seem like a lot for something to come in front of town meeting, but in order to accept these funds and make use of them, we need to make this account available. Any questions? Okay. Article 11.
That's school budget.
That's the school budget, right? I'm sorry. Not only am I late, my brain isn't here yet. Or often the school budget comes earlier, and I'd hoped you'd taken care of it. This is the school budget, which it usually ends up in front of the meeting as several motions, one to reconfirm the district agreement, and then the operating budget, and then one for the capital budget. Under state law, we can't amend the amounts. So they present the budget, the school district, the superintendent and the school committee will be there to talk about anything any questions that anybody has. Are there any questions from anybody else? Nope. And Article 13 is also a school issue, and it will be moved by the school committee.
12 and
12 and
11 and 12.
So
well, 11 and 12.
We're on 11, now you want to go to 12.
Now I want to go to 12, sorry. 12 is different in that it's not part of the regular school, but when the district was formed, the expectation was that we would build 3 new schools. We've built 2 new schools in Manchester, and that was acceptable to Essex because they acknowledged that the high school was a disaster, but the Manchester Memorial School needed work more than the Essex, and now it's come around and it's time for a feasibility study to decide whether to renovate the existing school, to replace it where it is, or to put it someplace else. The $660,000 for this is our share. The total is 1.5 million, and that's divided. A third goes to the district. The district will pay a third of it, And the remaining 2/3 are split between Manchester and Essex following the formula in the district agreement, which means that Manchester pays 2/3 of the 2/3. It's, yeah, right, pie chart.
2/3 of the total.
No, 2/3 of 2/3, which is 4/6, I think, or something like that. Anyway. Yeah, if you keep multiplying,
I keep going.
very good.
Love to extrapolate.
Right, the process of building a new school is probably at least 5 years by the time you're done. Even the feasibility study is going to be probably more than 18 months. The feasibility study is something that's required by the Massachusetts School Building Association, and us Design Association. Anyway, Massachusetts, if we want funds from the state to help pay for the school, we follow their rules. And their rules say, you put the money aside now to pay for the feasibility study to show that you're serious about this and that you have support from your community. And this was approved unanimously by the select board.
So this will be a vote, I should have mentioned this at
yes.
Article 8 with the bonds.
Yes.
So both the Article 8 and this article will require approval at town meeting as well as by ballot at town election on the 21st of May.
Mm-hmm. This, yeah, the bonds are a, oh God, it's an exemption for, it's a bond exemption.
Right, so debt exclusion.
Debt exclusion, that's the word.
Bonds, and then this, for Article 12, we're proposing what's called a capital expenditure exclusion, which, while we're not bonding for it, we're raising it, but we're raising it outside the limits of Proposition 2.5.
Both the bonding and the feasibility study are not governed by 2.5, and they will raise taxes outside beyond the 2.5%. In the case of the bond, when the bond is paid off, the exclusion reverts. And in the case of the capital exclusion, it's only an exclusion for 1 year. And the finance committee and the select board agreed that that was an appropriate way to pay for this one-time expenditure to get the process moving for the new school.
No questions.
No questions.
12.
Oh, I must be being boring. Okay. Article 13. Oh, this is a good complicated one.
Yeah. Good luck.
Some years ago, it was determined that both of the turf fields, and for those of you who haven't been involved in this in detail, a turf field is not a turf field, it's an astroturf field. If it had been a turf field, it would be grass. So these are the non-turf fields, and it's basically a big rug that gets put on the ground, and then people in cleats run over it for 10 years, and then it has to be replaced. And it's been 12 years in the case of one and maybe more. So there was general agreement that the turf fields had to be replaced. The question was how to do it. And the school suggested that they could pay for all of it, but that would leave them with very few reserves. And the town stepped up and said, well, maybe the school could borrow it and we could pay the bond. And then maybe Essex wanted to pay it in cash. So this is probably the third time you've seen the turf field payment. And this is going to be the last time. We finally decided that the right thing to do was to take money from the town's available funds to pay our remaining portion. And just in case anybody isn't really bored yet, I'll give you why. To the remaining portion. The Highland Field belongs to the district, and Manchester pays its 2/3 of the 2/3 that don't come out of the school. Brook Street is used by the town heavily, so the town initially paid half of the cost of Brook Street, leaving a half to be divided between Essex and Manchester.
By apportionment.
Yeah.
By apportionment. Yes, Rick Rogers. If you unmute yourself, you're easier to hear.
Sorry, I thought I had. Rick Rogers, 82 Old
have
Essex
pictures?
Road. Yeah, no, it's like you click the button and sometimes it doesn't click, right? So I apologize. I'm going to bring this up now because I probably don't want to bring it up on town meeting floor, but I am concerned by the best word is amount, right? The amount of money that we spend on athletic fields versus other educational aspects in the school. And I know we're beholden to the superintendent here, but that where there is no librarian and we're reducing, sorry, language studies and some other things like that in the school, honestly, I feel like that might be a little bit better use of our funds. And I don't expect you guys to act or do anything. I just kind of wanted to just throw that out there because I think it's an important consideration.
You are not the first to mention that.
Yeah, no, I'm sure I'm not. But, when you got the floor, you take it, right? So,
yeah.
Thank you.
So this meeting isn't really about deliberating, right?
Yeah, no, I get it. I had the chance and I had to speak.
I can give you a short answer. The school has an operating and a capital budget. And using reserve funds for the operating budget, which would be what would be involved if they were to use them to pay for world language or performing arts.
Yeah, no, perfect. It makes sense. I get you.
Using operational funds for something that's one time, using reserve funds for something that's one time capital is not going to make the next year's budget worse.
Yep, gotcha.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next is the Community Preservation Committee's list of where they're going to spend their money. Does anybody want me to read all of the pieces or?
No.
Rick's hand is up again.
Yes, Rick.
Yeah, sorry, me again. So Rick Rogers, 82 Old Essex Road. I would just like a little clarity on a couple of points. Item number 4, the Powder House Hill parking and access easement. I'm curious as to where that is. Living on the Old Essex Road, I come up to the top of Pleasant all the time. And that parking space by the entrance to Powder House from the Pleasant Street side, quite honestly, there's 4 or 5 spots there, and they are never taken by people that are hiking in Powder House, right? It's people that live on Pleasant Street that park there. So I'm a little curious what that expense is for. And I'm very curious, the Manchester Affordable Housing Trust Project, number 10. $200,000. I have no doubt it's probably valuable. I'm just kind of curious what it is.
Okay, the Powder House Hill parking, I think, is from the Newport Park area.
Directly related to the article.
So it's the next article.
It's directly related to the next article. And I'm going to talk briefly about the next article. When the Newport Park was built, part of the arrangement was that there would be an easement for people to get from Pine Street into Powder House Hill. And through whatever, they put a building largely on that easement. And we've been negotiating for Greg has been negotiating for some time to change the easement and make parking available in that area for people who want to get to Powder House Hill. And the money in number 4 is to probably pave a parking space and do whatever is necessary to make the easement work. And the
Cool.
other.
Good idea.
Go ahead if you.
No, sorry. I was just appreciating that. I think that's a great idea.
The other, I'm sorry, you had
10.
number 10. Thank you.
Number 10. I just kind of curious how that 200,000 is being spent and the objective there.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
It's not
So
being.
it's basically going into a fund that they are holding in anticipation of a deal coming through. So if
this is the Affordable Housing Trust.
Yes. So this money goes to the trust.
Yes.
And it's available to them to strike a deal when that deal materializes.
Okay.
Oh, great. Oh, no, we should do more of that. Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Susan Harrington.
Susan Harrington, 0 Woodhome Road. Just a quick question on a low-cost item. The Winthrop Field Drainage Project, I know there's a lot of restrictions on how that field can be used from Clara Winthrop. But I'm just curious, why is drainage needed and where?
Did she show my address?
Okay. I think it's the Winthrop Field, which looks like something that just happened accidentally, in fact, is underlaid with a lot of plumbing. It naturally turns itself into a swamp. And this is part of an ongoing project to clean out the pipes that were installed in the probably 1920s. You know, it's part of the maintenance of the area. It's the way that the water gets from the various hollows into the pond and then out into the harbor.
Okay, thanks very much, Anne.
Mr. Furlong.
Thank you, Chuck Furlong, 19 Ocean Street. With respect to the $200,000 allocation to the Housing Trust, my understanding is the Housing Trust did an RFP submitted to developers in 2022 and got 0 respondents. It did another RPI, if that's the right terminology, 2023 and got nothing. And there are two other considerations. We have a Shingle Hill decision, which is going to come down from the land court. And we have Powder House Hill, which frankly seems to have been forgotten by many people, but it was going to be a very significant movement toward fulfilling our 10% cap for affordable housing. And I haven't heard any meaningful update on that project in 18 months. So I'd like to hear why we continue to fund $200,000 a year for a housing authority that certainly hasn't done much with it. And B, why would we not pause on that $200,000 and see what happens with Powder House Hill and see what happens with Shingle Hill?
Okay. I think by Powder House Hill, you mean Powder House Lane, which is currently affordable housing and which was transferred to a management company.
CDC. The North Shore CDC.
The North Shore CDC.
No, it's not.
It's not on the SHI.
It's in the process.
It's in the process. For those of you who the SHI is the subsidized housing inventory, and it's required to be about 10% of our housing, and we're at a little over 5. The idea is that the units at Powder House Lane will be put on the SHI, but they can't all be put on at once. They have to be put on, at least when I most recently talked to the director of North Shore CDC, he said that as the units were emptied and properly advertised, the subsidized housing inventory is on the capital A affordable side of affordable housing. It doesn't mean that it's cheap. It should be cheaper than most. It means that it meets a lot of state requirements, including the way that new renters are chosen. And it was the decision of the North Shore CDC not to evict the current residents. If they had, they could have turned the whole thing over at once, but they are doing it gradually as people move out.
Well, if you'll pardon me, my recollection of the representations made by CDC during that whole process was that eviction process would not take place, and that we would have meaningful improvement.
Additionally to that, with the Powder House Lane, those properties were purchased by a group after SLV came into play. So that does not negate, unfortunately, that doesn't, doesn't have SLV come off the table.
And we're short 100 units and there are 29 there.
Right.
So
all their units. Okay.
Please.
I'm not sure you're answering my question. I said I've asked what the impact of the SLV decision will be, which, if my recollection is correct, there are 35 units of affordable housing which would be generated there. And my recollection about Powder House Lane, or whatever it's called, was that there would be 25 units and that they would be quickly added to our number of affordable housing units by the nominated CDC, which hasn't happened. So to me, it's very frustrating as a citizen when we keep funding the Affordable Housing Trust $200,000 a year, who hasn't made any progress. And we have these other two elements that also, one is a ticking time bomb, and the other one seems not to have been able to get out of its own way. So I find it very frustrating, and I'm sure other citizens do. Thank you.
Can I comment here?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me comment. Chuck, all of this takes a lot of time, and there are 3 different initiatives that are going here. And to work through the system and try and get something on the subsidized housing inventory is a struggle. With regard to Shingle Hill, you know that is in various legal stages right now. The expectation, I think, for most realistic people, it's going to be there for quite a while. So don't start counting those houses. And by the way, those houses would amount, or units would amount to 138 because it's a Chapter 40B. So under 40B, although only a quarter of the units are affordable, because it's under 40B, all of them count as being affordable. So, or as rental, yes. Right. And therefore would be eligible for the being on our subsidized housing list. Okay. The Powder House Hill project Lane project is just taking time. There are certain criteria that you've got to meet, not only with regard to the people who are occupying it, who obviously have to go to a lottery person by person, but there are certain restrictions associated with apartment houses in terms of what the facilities have, in terms of elevators and all kinds of other things, and they have to conform to those things as well. That all takes time, and I know it takes more time than anyone would expect. With regard to the Affordable Housing Trust, they keep on building up their kitty, and the more money that they have, the more leverage they have to negotiate with various entities to try and get some sort of affordable housing initiative going on in town. I'm not sure what their balance is. It is like $1 million now. Okay. You have to leverage that because $1 million does not go very far in this town. But they are making efforts to try and figure out how they can use that money to acquire or otherwise find property in town here and get some sort of initiative going. And they did have somebody reply with regard to this request for the RFI.
Yes.
And that is in discussion right now. So the wheels are moving a little bit there, but any additional money they have just strengthens their hand or has the possibility of attracting more folks.
I'd also like to add one more thing to that. The Affordable Housing Trust has been working for quite some time. And when the group SEMA got together and decided to go forward on their own, as opposed to working with the town, so that it could have been done in a way where the people involved understood how the subsidized housing inventory worked, it would have been a much smoother and more appropriate process. So the Affordable Housing Trust has been working very hard, but they're going about it the way they have to, as far as the state's concerned. And the reason the items on Powder House Lane have not is because it wasn't done with the state guidelines and how subsidized housing is actually arrived at. And the group SEMA also, they were very concerned that the people not be evicted, which is very thoughtful.
One last thing, if you don't mind, is that although SLV would take a big dent out of the state requirement, it still doesn't meet the town's requirements. All right, only 35 will be affordable. 135, 138 will count as far as the state is required, but it still doesn't help the town out of a bind. And as a result, and as Greg had mentioned, we need a chunk of change to be able to really, and John mentioned it before, so is that to be able to be taken seriously with a developer, we have to have some skin in the game. And
exactly.
And $1 million doesn't do it. Maybe two. And that's the ultimate goal, is to provide real affordable housing, not just on paper.
And what you're saying, Brian, the SLV was talking about the affordable housing is based on area median income, which includes Cambridge for some odd reason, but area median income, when the town first was approached by SLV, so I was involved with that, when we were trying to do a friendly 40B, they're only talking about having those homes be at 80% area median income. So you're talking about, and 7 years ago, that was $80,000. So that amount is higher now. That's not truly affordable housing, but that's what a 40B is able to do. So as Brian's saying, it would be really nice to have real affordable housing.
DF. Okay, Donna.
Yeah, thank you, Anne, very much. Donna Furs, 8 Blossom Lane. I agree. I've been on a lot of the Housing Trust meetings, and I was there when Mr. Fauerbach had the consultant speak regarding the RFP and what was happening. And I think my concern, as probably a little bit of what Chuck was saying, was that these consultants come in and they say, you know, it's to build these small affordable housing places behind Newport Park or Loading Place, to make anything affordable for them or to make anything that they can make money, they need another piece of land in town. And I'm not quite sure what the answer is for the Housing Trust to be able to move forward to find the ability to make affordable housing. And we're going to keep putting money in the trust, which is fine. It's just, I wonder what we can do as a town to be able to try to figure this out. Do you know what I mean? Because we don't have a lot of land to be able to give a developer to give us some of this affordable housing and for them to build as well. And I can sense the Housing Trust's frustration a little bit too. I'm not even quite sure what the answer is, but I think that there's some frustration there that I hear at the meetings anyway. Thank you very much.
Okay, I can speak slightly to that. At a recent town meeting, we took a non-binding vote asking whether the town might consider making the land that's currently used by the DPW off of Pleasant Street available for housing. That is not a determination. There are other uses in town. There are other needs in town that might be more important for that land, but that is a piece of land that the town meeting has considered.
That would be great.
Well, other people have other needs, but that is an option. Anything else on 14? Okay, 15, we've already talked about slightly. It's swapping an unusable easement and unavailable parking spaces for a usable easement and parking spaces. And it's a land transfer and requires the town meeting vote. Okay. Article 16. Yes. To see if the town will transfer from available funds $100,000 for the FY24 legal expenses account. This year we've had substantial and unusual legal expenses, many having to do with the SLV Shingle House Hill project, and some having to do with planning board, the changes to the zoning that the planning board is doing, and which require legal advice. Approximately right?
Yes.
Any questions? Article 17. This is something that we do every year. We have to pay benefits other than pensions to retired employees. Most of that is health insurance. Policemen in specific and firemen, and probably some other town employees, retire before they're eligible for Medicare. And the town is responsible for their health insurance, and we're responsible for some addition to, everyone is required to go on to Medicare once they're eligible, but there are some additional expenses that we are contractually obligated to provide. And that originally was paid for year by year as the bills came in, and that is not a wise policy. The state has made an investment opportunity available and is encouraging towns and cities to pay for the other post-employment benefits ahead of time. So we figure out what the profile of our employees are, and that determines how much we're going to need to pay for them and when. And this is a rather effective investment account that's used, managed by the state, and it produces better returns than anything else we could do with the money legally. And we've been doing it for probably 10 years, I would guess.
About 10 years, yes.
And we are ahead of most towns in building up this one. Any questions on 17? Mm-hmm. Excellent. 18. When we talked about the launch, we may have mentioned that although we are asking the town for money to run the launch service. And we're trying to keep the launch service from costing anything to the town, but we have to pay for this year's salaries, and then we will take in the income, and it will be available to pay for next year's. That's an awkward accounting, and for two of our programs, the recreation program and the Board of Health emergency clinics, we have an alternative, which is a revolving fund, and the Parks and Rec can pay for their activities out of the income that comes in the year. And so can the Board of Health clinics. And so this is just, that sounds like, why are we bothering with this? A revolving fund has to be reauthorized every year. And that's all that set 18 is doing. Questions? No. 19. This is changing some of the Board of Health regulations. It looks terrible. Why would we delete all of these good tobacco regulations? The answer is that it's much easier for the Board of Health to rely on the state regulations, which can be changed as appropriate rather than having them be part of regulations that have to be approved by town meeting. And the Board of Health has asked that they be given this flexibility. Nothing. And Article 20 is a citizens petition from Donna First and others to allow advertising at the playing fields, Sweeney Park and Highland Field specifically. And the reason that it requires a town meeting vote is that we have a law, which is printed in full, that says that you can only advertise for something that's happening in that building, and that's significant restrictions on the size of the advertising. And Donna took this on herself as her quest, so that the schools could accept advertising to help pay for the costs of athletic programs. And the Sweeney Park has had banners that are really advertising that help the softball. And so this would allow town-owned and school-owned properties to sell advertising space to pay for athletics. And the select board talked about it quite recently and agreed that this was something that we could support unanimously.
Awesome.
Donna, don't you want to say thank you?
Sure.
She's got her hand up.
She's got her hand, okay.
I absolutely want to say thank you. This is 7 years in the making of me working on this, and I'm just forever grateful for the support of both the school committee and the select board, and hopefully the town will agree. And I know that the select board will be very involved with approving anything that's advertisement at town-owned fields, as well as the school committee, making sure that they work with our athletic director on, we have a policy and procedure in place for school-owned property. So I know things will be done in a very professional way, and just forever grateful for you guys supporting this article. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And finally, there's Article 21, which we always have at the end of the warrant, in case there are changes to the money amounts and we have to shift funds And we don't anticipate that that will be the case this year. Well, thank you for, do we want to
Let's see.
continue? Well, we may as well go through the ballot questions.
The three ballot questions are related to.
Yeah,
the two,
yes.
the two articles in the warrant. So Article 8, which is the bond, so the two questions related to that. We have a special act that requires any borrowing over $1 million to be approved by ballot. And then because it's a debt exclusion, it has a second ballot question.
Right. First we have to approve the bond amount, and that's contingent on it being excluded, and then we have to vote to exclude it. And the other is the debt, the capital exclusion for the 660 that we talked about for the feasibility study.
Any questions?
And you all saw Rick's message of thanks.
Yes.
That was very nice.
Okay, there being no further business,
Move to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you to everybody.
Thank you for everybody.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for the questions. I hope we answered them. But we'll be prepared to do it again.
Sarah, thank you.
Sarah, thank you for coming down.
I was asking for informal advice on someone who's never been